Evan leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms above his head as the last glow of the twin suns faded behind the horizon. The quiet hum of the outpost's life support system filled the room, a constant reminder that he was far from Earth. He glanced at the small, tidy bed in his room and let out a laugh. Empty again, he muttered to himself. Guess it's just me and the stars tonight. He chuckled at the thought, imagining someone else sleeping there, someone to talk to share the view with, but the reality was clear. The room was quiet, the bed untouched, and he was alone. Alone, but comfortable in his routine. Evan had spent years on the edge of known space, fixing damaged equipment, calibrating sensors, and keeping the outpost running smoothly. He liked the isolation, it gave him time to think, and he never feared the quiet. Yet, tonight, the empty bed reminded him of what he didn't have: companionship. He shrugged, telling himself he was fine with it, though a small part of him wished for change. The hum of the communications console broke his thoughts. A sudden alert flashed red. Incoming signal from nearby space. Evan straightened, heart racing. Signals this close to the outpost were rare. He tapped the console, scanning the data. The source was not an outpost ship, not a routine check-in. It was an unknown vessel, small and moving fast. Something was wrong. Captain, I've got a reading. Unknown pod, heading toward the outpost, Evan said, stepping into the corridor. His voice was steady, but his hands moved quickly over the controls. The captain, a calm woman named Reyes, turned sharply. Unknown pod. Is it automated or crewed? Evan shook his head. Too small to be a crewed ship. Could be an escape pod. We need to intercept. Minutes later, Evan was suited up with a small team, heading toward the crash site. The air was cold outside the reinforced doors, and the outpost's gravity generator hummed softly as they floated down the ramp. Sparks of dust drifted in the dim light, particles from the nearby asteroid belt catching the glow. The pod had landed in a shallow crater, metal twisted, smoke rising from cracks. Evan's heart pounded not from fear, but curiosity. What could survive a crash like this? He carefully approached the pod, signaling his team to stay back. With a hiss, the pod's hatch opened. Inside, two figures curled together, shivering, barely conscious. Evan froze. They were humanoid, but their skins shimmered with a faint, pale blue hue. Their eyes were large and dark, reflecting the dim light. Two survivors, Evan whispered, gently lifting one of them. They were lighter than he expected, almost fragile. The smaller sister stirred, her eyes flickering open. Please, help, she whispered in a strange, melodic voice. Evan felt a warmth in his chest at her trust. Don't worry. You're safe now, he said softly, carrying them to the outpost's medbay. Once inside, medical scanners ran quickly, analyzing their vitals. Both sisters were tired and dehydrated, but stable. Evan watched them closely. Their movements were cautious, as if every step might trigger some danger. He realized they were not just frightened, they were alert, intelligent, aware of threats he couldn't yet understand. Captain Reyes raised an eyebrow. Evan. I don't know, he admitted. They're humanoid, but not human. They're intelligent. That's certain. The sisters, he learned their names were Lyra and Mira, stayed close together. Lyra, the older one, seemed protective, placing her hand lightly on Mira's shoulder. Evan noticed something unusual. Every time he moved, their eyes followed him, not just observing, but studying. They're following me, Evan muttered under his breath, a little amused. Even unconscious, they track my movements. Mira stirred, looking up at him with wide eyes. Evan nodded, kneeling beside her. Yes, you're safe here. She blinked, then relaxed slightly. Evan could see trust beginning to form. But there was something else in her gaze. A question. Almost a challenge. They were not ordinary visitors. That much was clear. Over the next few hours, Evan helped the sisters adjust. They drank water, ate some nutrient gel, and explored the medbay carefully. Lyra's fingers hovered over the controls, touching screens with precision, but never pressing any command without permission. Mira copied her sister, moving with cautious grace. Evan couldn't help but admire their coordination, their silent communication. "They understand our technology," he said to Reyes. "They might be able to help us." Reyes shook her head. "Or they could be dangerous. We don't know anything about them." Evan smiled faintly. "Or they might just be scared. And maybe, just maybe, they need a friend." By the next day, the sisters were awake, alert, and surprisingly resilient. Evan offered them simple food and a place to rest. But no matter what he did, they stayed close, following him everywhere, even to the observation deck, where he checked the external sensors. "You really laugh at an empty bed, don't you?" Lyra asked suddenly, her voice curious. Evan froze. She spoke perfect galactic common, though her accent was soft and musical. Yes," he admitted, surprised. "I guess I joke about being alone." Lyra tilted her head, studying him. "Human, you laugh, even when alone. Strange, but strong." Evan laughed nervously. "Strong? I'm just me." Mira looked at him, eyes wide. You are important. You needed." Evan frowned, unsure what they meant. "Needed? By me? No," Lyra corrected gently. "By us." The sisters exchanged a glance, their expressions serious now. Evan realized they weren't speaking metaphorically. They were telling him something important. Later that night, Evan sat in the observation deck, looking at the stars. Lyra and Mira were near him, quiet but attentive. He could feel their eyes on him even without turning. "You're different," Lyra said finally. "The prophecy. It speaks of a human who laughs at loneliness. You are him." Evan blinked. "Prophecy? What do you mean?" Mira stepped closer, her voice urgent. "We search long time for human like you. Protect, guide, only you." Evan's mind raced. A prophecy? Chosen by aliens? It sounded impossible, like something from an old Earth story. Yet, looking at them, he felt a strange pull, an invisible thread connecting him to these two fragile, determined beings. "You're following me," he said softly, half laughing. "Because I laugh?" "Yes," Lyra replied, without hesitation. "Because you strong. Because you human." Evan swallowed hard, the reality settling in. His quiet life, his empty bed, the isolation he had joked about it, was gone. Somehow, he had become the center of something far larger, something beyond Earth, beyond human imagination. As the night deepened, Evan watched the sisters sleep nearby. Their breathing was even, calm, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a strange comfort. Maybe he wasn't truly alone. Maybe this unexpected arrival, the crash pod, the sisters, the prophecy was the start of a new chapter. He laughed quietly to himself, shaking his head. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, cold and bright. Inside, the warmth of the outpost felt different now, charged with anticipation. Two alien sisters, mysterious and strong, had found him. And somehow, he knew this was only the beginning. The morning light crept through the outpost windows, painting the walls in shades of gold and silver. Evan moved through the corridor, grabbing a cup of nutrient tea, his thoughts still tangled with the sisters' strange words from last night. Prophecy? Chosen human? It sounded impossible, yet the conviction in their eyes had made him pause. Lyra and Mira followed him quietly, as usual. The outpost crew had grown accustomed to their presence, though whispers of curiosity and unease trailed behind them. No one had ever seen aliens like this, and their loyalty to Evan was puzzling. He tried not to laugh this time. He had learned it drew their attention, their gaze both intense and soft at the same time. "You are strong," Lyra said softly, walking beside him. "Stronger than you think." Evan chuckled. "I fix machines, not worlds." Lyra's eyes narrowed, studying him carefully. "Machines. Only small. Worlds. Possible with you." Evan froze mid-step, realizing she meant more than just words. There was a depth to their knowledge, a certainty he didn't understand. Mira, quieter than her sister, stayed close to Evan's shadow, her gaze darting between him and the outpost crew. The sisters adapted quickly. They learned human routines with surprising speed, even mimicking gestures and tone when talking to the crew. Yet, every action seemed calculated, precise, as if each movement carried hidden meaning. Evan watched them from across the medbay as they repaired minor equipment with intuitive skill, their fingers moving over tools as if guided by instinct and something else he couldn't name. "They understand the tech," Evan murmured to Captain Reyes. She looked at him skeptically, arms crossed. "Or they could understand humans too well," she replied. "Be careful." Evan shrugged. "Or they just want to help. They are curious, but not dangerous." One evening, a sudden power surge rattled the outpost. Alarms beeped urgently, red lights flashing. The crew rushed to stabilize the systems, but something strange happened. Lyra moved toward the main console without hesitation. She placed her hands on the control panel, and a soft, glowing light emanated from her palms. The energy stabilized the failing system in seconds, halting sparks from flying and preventing the outpost from plunging into darkness. The crew gasped. Evan stared at her in astonishment. What just happened?" Lyra looked at him. "Calm. Help. As needed." Mira stepped closer, her eyes wide, following every movement of the consoles. Evan realized that the sisters' biology wasn't ordinary. It was almost like technology itself, built into them, a living interface with machines. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Evan spoke to them. "You saved the outpost." "How?" Lyra shook her head slightly. "Cannot explain fully. You must trust." Evan nodded, unsure what else to say. But Mira, standing beside him, whispered softly, "We sent to find human." Evan blinked. "Find me?" "Yes," Lyra said. "You, human from prophecy. Laugh at loneliness. Strong. Can help us. Can guide." Evan laughed nervously, unsure how to respond. Mira's gaze was serious. Not joke. Many tried. Failed. You. Last hope. The words sent a shiver down Evan's spine. He had spent years thinking humans were insignificant in the vast galaxy, just another species struggling to survive. But here, in front of him, two beings relied on him, believed he had a purpose far larger than he had ever imagined. Over the next few days, Evan tried to understand them. He noticed small things. How they moved in perfect coordination. How they avoided objects as if predicting their path. And how they communicated silently, with subtle gestures. The sisters seemed to sense his mood, often adjusting their behavior to comfort or alert him. It was as if they had evolved not just physically but socially, capable of detecting intention and emotion with precision. One afternoon, while examining an old communication array, Lyra paused. "You. Problem. Alone. Funny. Evan smiled faintly. Yeah. I joke about being lonely. Helps me stay sane. Lyra tilted her head. Alone. Laugh. Rare. Human. Special. Mira stepped forward. We travel long. Find human like you. Many others. Refuse. Laugh. Accept alone. You. Accept. Evan swallowed hard. The sisters were saying that humans, in general, were not suited to their world or mission. Yet somehow he fit their description. It was flattering, terrifying, and confusing, all at once. Days passed, and the sisters' curiosity about human life grew. They asked about Earth, about Evan's childhood, and about his work on the outpost. In return, Evan learned about their homeworld, Nivara, a distant planet with 2 moons, advanced civilizations, and political unrest. The sisters were refugees, but not ordinary ones. They were messengers, observers, and protectors, sent to find the human mentioned in an ancient prophecy that spoke of change, hope, and unity. One evening, Mira pulled Evan aside. We not tell all. Danger. Enemies. Want us. Use. Our gifts. Human. You help. Protect. Evan's heart pounded. Enemies? Who are they? Mira shook her head. Cannot say yet. Only know. Must trust you. Must follow. Guide you. Evan felt a mix of fear and excitement. His life, which had been predictable and quiet, was now filled with danger, responsibility, and unknown possibilities. He realized that protecting these 2 sisters was not just an act of kindness, it was essential to their survival, and perhaps to something much larger than himself. That night, Evan sat in his small room, Lyra and Mira quietly nearby. Their eyes followed his every movement, yet there was no fear, only trust and expectation. He poured himself another cup of tea, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what had happened. You trust me? He asked softly, mostly to himself. Yes, Lyra said immediately, her voice gentle but firm. We trust you, human. Mira nodded, her gaze steady. We follow. Evan leaned back, closing his eyes. He had joked about his empty bed, about being alone in space, but now the truth was undeniable. He was no longer alone. 2 alien sisters, with abilities and knowledge far beyond his own, had chosen to stay with him. Their faith was not casual. It was deliberate. Deliberate enough to make him reconsider what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of mysteries. For the first time in a long while, Evan felt a sense of purpose beyond fixing machines or running an outpost. He was needed not just for survival, but for guidance, for hope, for a chance to change things on a scale he had never imagined. As the twin moons of the nearby planet rose, casting silver light through the observation deck, Evan looked at Lyra and Mira. Their expressions were calm, focused, yet filled with anticipation. They were ready to follow him, to trust him, and perhaps to teach him things he could never have learned alone. A soft smile appeared on Evan's face. All right, he said quietly. If we're doing this, let's do it together. Outside, the stars glittered cold and distant, yet inside the outpost, warmth and purpose had settled. The sisters were no longer just guests or mysterious beings, they were companions, allies, and a sign that even the most ordinary human could become extraordinary. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, unseen threats were beginning to move. But for now, Evan and the sisters were together, preparing for a future that neither of them could yet predict. The adventure had only begun, and the bond between human and alien sisters was growing stronger with each passing hour. The quiet of the outpost did not last long. On the third day after the sisters' arrival, the sensors picked up an unusual blip on the edge of the asteroid belt. It wasn't like anything the crew had seen before. A dark, angular ship moved fast, deliberately, and it emitted no friendly signals. Evan's stomach tightened. "Captain Reyes," he said, pointing at the monitor. "We have an incoming vessel. It's not transmitting identification codes." Reyes frowned. "Unknown ship, closing fast. Shields up, prepare defenses, and keep the sisters safe." Evan's gaze shifted to Lyra and Mira, who were quietly observing the display. Their expressions were tense, almost fearful. Evan had never seen them like this. "It's them," Mira whispered, her voice trembling. "The ones hunting us." Evan's heart skipped a beat. "Hunting you?" Lyra's eyes met his. "They want our gifts. They cannot take us alive." The words were chilling. Gifts. Powers. Whatever these enemies wanted, it was dangerous enough that the sisters had fled their world. And now, it seemed, they were following. Evan took a deep breath. He had faced mechanical failures, asteroid storms, and long days alone. But this was different. He was responsible for 2 lives. And failure wasn't an option. "Everyone," Reyes called out. "Stations ready. Shields up. Weapons on standby. Evan, stay with the sisters." Evan nodded, positioning himself near the medbay where Lyra and Mira could remain safe. Yet, even as the alarms blared, the sisters' eyes never left him. It was clear they trusted him completely, even in the face of danger. The ship arrived within minutes, drones spilling out and advancing toward the outpost. They were sleek, black machines, designed for speed and destruction. The crew scrambled, manning turrets and activating defensive shields, but the drones were precise, almost surgical in their attack. Evan moved instinctively. "Lyra, Mira, stay behind me." The sisters obeyed, but Evan noticed Lyra's hands twitching near her side. Her glow flared faintly as she stepped forward. Mira mirrored her. Both of them extended their hands toward the approaching drones, a soft light spreading from their palms. The first drones stopped mid-air, circuits shorting, spinning away harmlessly. Evan's jaw dropped. "You can control them?" Lyra shook her head slightly. "No. Influence. Protect." It was enough. The drones faltered long enough for the crew to regroup. Turrets fired, shields strengthened, and the outpost managed to block the main attack. Yet the threat remained, the enemy was patient, and the battle had only begun. Hours passed, with skirmishes across the perimeter. Evan stayed close to the sisters, coordinating human defenses while they provided their mysterious support. Mira's abilities were subtler than Lyra's, but equally vital. She could detect weaknesses in enemy drones, guiding turrets with precision. In a quiet moment, Evan spoke to Lyra. "Why didn't you tell us about this before?" Afraid," she said softly. "Human. Maybe in danger. We wanted to know. Trust, before burden." Evan nodded. "You don't need to apologize. We're in this together now." The calm didn't last long. One drone managed to breach the outer shield and headed straight for the medbay. Mira screamed, rushing to intercept it. Lyra followed. But Evan was faster, throwing himself in front of the drone's trajectory. With quick thinking, he activated a nearby field generator, trapping the drone in a magnetic pulse. Sparks flew, and the machine fell, deactivated. The sisters stared at him, wide-eyed. "Human, you protect us," Lyra said. Evan exhaled, brushing sweat from his forehead. "It's what I do. You're not a burden. You're part of this team now." Mira looked at him, a small smile forming. "We learn from you." By the end of the first attack, the enemy ship retreated, taking the remaining drones back into orbit. But their message was clear. They would return, stronger and more prepared. That night, the outpost gathered in the control room. Evan stood beside the sisters, explaining what had happened to the crew. He emphasized that the sisters were not just passengers, they were allies, capable of saving lives in ways humans could not. "Listen carefully," Evan said, looking at the team. "They may be strange, but they're on our side. Without them, we would have lost today. With them, we have a chance." The crew nodded, slowly beginning to trust the sisters. Lyra and Mira bowed slightly, acknowledging the human team, but their eyes always returned to Evan. Alone in the observation deck later, Evan sat between the sisters, who were calm now, their hands glowing faintly as they processed the day. "You're remarkable," Evan said softly. "I never thought." Lyra tilted her head. Remarkable, together, you, human, strong in heart. Laugh, even in danger." Evan laughed quietly, shaking his head. "Laugh? Even now?" "Yes," Mira said. "Laugh. Shows courage. Shows spirit. They do not understand." Evan realized she meant the enemy. The ones chasing them were ruthless, and his laughter, his simple human confidence, was something they could not predict or control. The next day, the sisters explained more about their world. Nivara was divided, their people scattered and under threat from those who sought to exploit unique abilities like theirs. Lyra and Mira were messengers, sent to find a human who could guide them, a human who could help unite their people and resist the enemies. "And you believe I'm that human?" Evan asked. Lyra nodded. "Yes. Prophecy says one will laugh at loneliness, will lead, guide." Evan looked down at his hands. He had never thought of himself as a hero. He had fixed machines, calculated trajectories, and repaired systems. But leading an alien people, guiding them against unknown enemies? It seemed impossible. Yet the sisters' unwavering trust planted a seed of determination within him. A sudden alarm interrupted his thoughts. Another drone was approaching, faster and more dangerous than before. This time, Evan acted without hesitation. He coordinated the outpost defenses, while the sisters used their abilities in perfect synchronization. Lyra's light stabilized failing systems, while Mira pinpointed weak points in the drone's armor. Evan directed the turret fire, and together, they neutralized the threat in minutes. The crew cheered, but Evan barely noticed. His focus was on the sisters, their trust, and the realization that together, they could face anything. That night, Evan lay in his quarters, staring at the ceiling. Lyra and Mira sat beside him, silent but alert. He realized the bond between them had grown beyond mere survival. They were partners, companions, and perhaps, in some strange way, "You trust me," he said softly. "Yes," Lyra replied. "We must. You, human, choice." Mira nodded. "Together. Strong." Evan smiled faintly, finally understanding. His life, once quiet and predictable, was now filled with purpose, danger, and companionship. The empty bed he had laughed about only days ago now felt like a distant memory. His path was clear: protect the sisters, face the enemy, and embrace the adventure that awaited them. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. The enemy ship was still out there, lurking, waiting. But inside the outpost, a new strength had emerged, a human who laughed in the face of loneliness, and two alien sisters who believed he could change the course of their destiny. And as Evan drifted into a restless sleep, he knew one thing with certainty: the coming days would test them all, but together, they were unstoppable. The night sky outside the outpost was calm, the twin moons reflecting silver across the metal hull. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, but quiet. Evan, Lyra, and Mira had spent days preparing for the inevitable return of the enemy. Yet now, in the stillness, a moment of clarity settled over them. They were ready not just to survive, but to act. Evan stood in the central corridor, scanning the reports from the past skirmishes. The enemy had retreated, but their strategy was obvious. They would return, stronger, smarter, and more dangerous. Yet Evan felt no fear, not because he believed they would be powerless, but because the sisters were beside him, their trust unwavering. "They will come again," Mira said softly, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. Evan nodded. Lyra stepped closer. "Human, your courage, it inspires. Others may follow." Evan smiled faintly. "I'm just a human, but I'll do my best." Days later, the warning systems blared. The enemy ship had returned, massive and imposing, bristling with weapons. Drones spilled out like swarms, moving toward the outpost with lethal precision. Evan, Lyra, and Mira were ready. The sisters' abilities were on full display. Lyra's glow stabilized failing systems, preventing catastrophic failures across the outpost. Mira's precise detection allowed turrets to target enemy drones with perfect accuracy. Evan coordinated every move, using human intuition to anticipate the enemy's strategy. Together, they were more than a team, they were a force. The battle raged for hours. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and the hull shook from impacts. Yet through it all, the sisters stayed close to Evan, their hands glowing, their focus unbroken. At one point, a drone broke through the outer defenses, moving straight toward the medbay where Lyra and Mira had taken position. Evan acted instinctively, throwing himself in its path and activating the nearby field generator, deactivating it just in time. "You risk yourself too much," Lyra whispered after the fight, her voice trembling with concern. Evan shook his head. "No, we protect each other. That's what we do." The enemy ship finally withdrew, retreating into the darkness. The outpost had survived, but the message was clear. They would return, and next time, the stakes would be higher. In the aftermath, Evan and the sisters worked tirelessly to repair damage, tending to both the outpost and the crew. The humans had begun to understand the sisters' value, not just in combat, but in strategy, support, and morale. Lyra and Mira moved with quiet grace, their loyalty to Evan evident in every action. That night, Evan sat in his quarters, the sisters beside him. The weight of what had happened and what was yet to come pressed on him, but for the first time, he felt a sense of clarity. "You've trusted me with your lives," Evan said softly, "and I trust you with mine." Lyra's eyes glimmered. "Human? Choice? You accept? Not only danger, also bond." Mira nodded. "Together, strong, always." Evan leaned back, smiling faintly. "Now," Lyra said, "we travel to Nivara. We unite our people. Show human can help change." Evan's heart pounded. "You want me to go with you?" "Yes," Mira said firmly. "You guide, protect, teach." Evan took a deep breath. This was bigger than anything he had imagined. He had thought of himself as just a human, insignificant in a galaxy full of wonders and dangers. Yet now, he realized his choices mattered not just to himself, but to two sisters, their people, and perhaps even the fate of distant worlds. The next morning, the outpost prepared for departure. Evan, Lyra, and Mira stood at the launch bay, the ship gleaming under the moon's light. Crew members waved, a mixture of awe and respect in their eyes. The sisters bowed slightly, acknowledging the humans who had supported them, but their eyes remained on Evan. "You ready?" Evan asked, gripping the rail of the ship. Yes, Lyra replied. Human, chosen, guide. Mira stepped forward, her hand resting lightly on Evan's arm. Together, always. The engines roared, and the ship lifted from the outpost, gliding into the endless stars. Evan watched the familiar landscape shrink below, feeling a strange mix of excitement and responsibility. The galaxy was vast, filled with unknown threats and opportunities, but he was not alone. Two alien sisters, loyal and powerful, were at his side, and together, they were unstoppable. Days passed in travel. Evan learned more about Lyra and Mira's culture, their language, their customs, and their vision for Nivara. The sisters, in turn, learned from him how humans solved problems, how they adapted, how they persevered. The bond between them deepened, not just of trust, but of mutual respect and understanding. One night, while gazing at the stars, Evan asked, "Do you ever miss home?" Lyra's expression softened. Home. Changed. We must protect others. Now, with you, new purpose. Mira added quietly. We, no longer alone. Human, chosen, makes difference. Evan smiled. I never thought my empty bed would lead to all this. The sisters laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes, delicate and warm. Empty bed. Not empty. Human. Presence. Everything changes, Lyra said. Finally, after days of travel, they approached Nivara. The planet stretched below them, a mix of oceans, mountains, and sprawling cities. But it was also a place of tension and conflict. Rebel factions, political unrest, and threats to the sisters' people awaited. Evan felt the weight of what was to come. Yet he was no longer just a human from a distant outpost. He was a guide, a protector, and a symbol of hope. The landing was smooth, the ship touching down in a quiet valley away from prying eyes. The sisters led Evan through hidden pathways, explaining the delicate politics and alliances he would need to navigate. He listened, absorbing every detail, knowing that his choices could change the course of history. As they reached a small settlement, the sisters paused. Human must meet our leaders, Lyra said. They doubt. You must show courage, heart. Evan nodded. He had faced machines, drones, and enemy ships, but meeting the leaders of a distant alien world was something entirely new. He felt a surge of determination. He was ready. The sisters flanked him as they entered the settlement, their presence commanding respect. People paused, eyes wide, whispers traveling quickly. And when the leaders finally appeared, there was silence. Lyra and Mira stepped forward, their trust in Evan evident to all. This human, Lyra said proudly, is the one spoken of in prophecy. He laughs at loneliness, guides, protects, teaches. Evan stood tall, feeling the weight of their words. He was nervous, yes, but also inspired. He had laughed at an empty bed, never imagining it would lead to this moment. And now, with two alien sisters beside him, he would face whatever challenges awaited, not as a lone human, but as part of a new bond that could change the galaxy. The leaders studied him, then nodded slowly. Respect and curiosity filled their eyes. Evan felt a small smile form. He had come far, and his journey had only just begun. Outside, the suns of Nivara rose, casting light across the valley. The sisters stayed close, their hands glowing faintly in the early light. Evan looked at them and finally understood. He was no longer just a human engineer with an empty bed. He was part of something larger, a new family, a new purpose, and a bond that would carry them through the trials ahead. And as the day began, Evan laughed softly, just as he always had. But this time, It was not a laugh of loneliness. It was a laugh of hope, courage, and the unbreakable connection between a human and two alien sisters who would follow him anywhere.